I hate it when people ask me where I'm from. It's not because I don't feel a sense of place in all of the cities and the states that I've lived. It's because if I were to answer this question honestly, I would say that I'm from my mother. She made me who I am, but she passed away when I was 16. That fact alone doesn't make her who she is, and it's not who I am either. She was one of 5 siblings from New York. She graduated high school, moved out into the world, worked in New York City, and eventually met and fell in love with my dad. By the time I was old enough to do the math, I realized that she was pregnant with me when she got married. She used to remind me that it was my fault that she didn't fit into her wedding dress, one of the many ways that I was and would continue to be a pain in her ass. Over the years, my parents fell out of love, and when I was young, they divorced. It was expectedly tumultuous, but we saw my dad on the weekend and holidays and over the summer and lived full-time with my mom. So really, from that point forward, it was me, my sister, and my mom. We used to refer to ourselves as the girls, and eventually everybody around us started doing that as well. She enrolled in nursing school full-time with 2 young kids, being the first in her family to go to college. And when my sister and I would stay home sick from school, we couldn't always just stay home. We would have to go with her to class because she couldn't afford to miss it. I even had a notebook that was dedicated to her nursing classes where I would sit there pretending to be a student, coughing and sneezing all over the place and asking questions, and one time I even got one right. As independent as she was to raise us on her own, I think she still missed being closer to family, to her brothers and sisters, her nieces and nephews, and her dad, my grandpa. So when I was young, she made the decision to move us back to the same small town in New York that she had left many years before. As I grew up, I became your typical angsty teenager, difficult, listened to my music really loud, but my mom really tried to ignore the lesser sides of me and instead tap into the good. So when I would get grounded for going to that party that I lied about, instead of leaving me locked up at home, she would take me with her. We would go to art festivals in Rhinebeck, outings with my aunt and my sister, or long hikes in the Catskills. I think she yearned for that relationship that a lot of mothers and daughters want, that Rory and Lorelai on Gilmore Girls, where everybody shares everything open and honestly. But as I got older, I became less willing to share what was going on in my life, and she became more interested about what was going on in mine. So she really tried to set this precedent of openness. She would talk to me about her sibling drama, difficulties with the men that she dated, and the topic that all teenagers love to hear about from their parents, sex. When I was about 15, she told me that we were going to get ice cream, and when I got in the car, she locked the door and said, "This is it, we're having the sex talk." So we drove around, and she tried to use cool lingo. She asked me if they still called it this, and it wouldn't be until many years later that I would kick myself a little bit for not taking advantage of those opportunities to be open with her. The first time that she was not open with us was when she was diagnosed with cancer. She told us, but she didn't tell us how bad it was, even though she already knew. I would occasionally have to miss school to drive her to doctor's appointments or treatments if nobody else could, and even while she was going through that, she would still try to find humor in the situation. She got a red wig to match my red hair color experiment so that we would still look related. I think she looked way better in it than I did. Every few months, she would have hospital stints, surgeries, treatments, or just have to go for a few days. So we had come to expect these every few months, and we would stay with my aunt when that happened. So one of those times when we were at my aunt's house, we knew that it was different when my dad walked in. My dad lived in North Carolina with my stepmom and their brand new baby. We drove down to the hospital that night to visit her, and walking in, I saw Hugh Laurie was on the cover of, I think it was Time magazine, so I bought one for her. She loved Dr. House, thinking that we could just take it up to her room and sit there and flip through the pages as if we were at home on the couch, but she could not do that. As we were sitting there in the hospital, she was holding my hand, and the last thing that she said to me was that she was sorry for disappointing me, for not making it to my high school graduation, which I would later learn was a goal for herself that she had set when she first got sick. It was just a day or two by the time she passed away after that visit. Life changed pretty quickly for me after that. I tried to continue to live my life as if she were still here while also acknowledging the fact that she's not. I think she would push me the same way that I push myself, not out of disappointment, but because she knew that I was capable of more. Just like she knew that she was capable of more at so many important parts in her life. And the thread that really weaves throughout her story is selflessness. When you're a parent, there's already inherent selflessness, but when you're a single parent, there's even more. And there wasn't somebody else that could pick me up from soccer practice or lacrosse or drive me and my friends to the movies, or somebody else that could stay home so that she could have a night out. Often she stayed home so that we could have a night out. How could anybody who instilled these values of independence and selflessness be a disappointment? I know that her passing away of cancer makes her a statistic, and I know that me losing my mom in high school makes me a statistic. But it turns out that I'm not very good at statistics. So if there's any way that I can honor her on Mother's Day, it's to choose to remember her strength. So why do I hate it? When people ask me where I'm from, I hate it because it's not something that can fit in a 5-minute networking chat. It's not something that can fit on a line in a grad school application. It's difficult for me to answer that question without wanting to give the full answer. So the honest answer, and the answer that I'm most proud of, is I am from my mother.